I know I've been around. I've kind of watched this because I was elected fairly young in 1980. I was elected as a member of the Village of Coldwater Council. And I've kind of watched through the whole history of this Site 41 and where we actually were with waste management in the county of Simcoe. And the reality is, up until 1991, the lower tier municipalities were responsible for their own waste management, and this was what happened with Site 41 when it was selected as a potential site, and it went through the tribunal, and then when the Peterson government overturned the tribunal's decision and gave a go-ahead as early as 1990 on this particular site, and I wanted to point out some of the things we've tried to do politically over the years, but there's some really interesting things happened, and I wanted to really zero in a little bit mainly on 1998. And that was the year I was the warden, and I can tell you that so many of the things I've heard just from a couple of the speakers, Reverend Black and from Peter, about staff controlling the decision making, and I've seen it so many times because at the county council, we would have, particularly at the first group of people that came, were the people who voiced the most concern at the county of Simcoe after the 1991, after the reversal of the tribunal, was the group from South Simcoe, the Adula Tosserantio people, because they hadn't got their C of A, or they hadn't been given an approval at that point. And I'm telling you, I remember to this day, it was like they were lepers when they showed up at the meetings. They were considered to be NIMBYs. They were no problem. They didn't have a lot of credibility. And yet, if you went outside and you talked to them one-on-one, they were really great people, bright people. And one of the things that I learned immediately was you had to really be careful of what the staff was telling you. And in 1998, I became the warden of the county of Simcoe. And we had this group called the Environmental Services Committee. And at that time, the director of Environmental Services was a guy by the name of Steen Clint, who moved on a couple of years later to something else. But I mean, it was clearly we had ministry of at any of those meetings, we had Ministry of Environment representatives from the ministry as well as the staff. And a number of times I recall people asking, well, are these sites safe? Because, you know, historically, the county of Simcoe, I'll go back to that in a second. Historically, the county of Simcoe has a very high profile for their environmental concerns. And you know, only the county of Simcoe, for example, has 31,000 acres of county reforestation in green space. And it's more than all of the other counties in the province of Ontario put together. So the people are concerned about the environment. But you're told over and over again that yes, the site is fine. And I remember talking directly to the Minister of the Environment representatives and say, well, why are people complaining about the water then? Well, Garfield, you got to get it right. Here, I'm going to tell you what's wrong. You know what? The water's got pressure on the ground. It comes up like that. This water pressure comes up all around, and then that's what separates the garbage from going down. But I was a plumbing contractor. I couldn't get them through my head because I kept thinking we put septic systems in, hundreds of septic systems across the county of Simcoe, and we always had to keep our tile pipe 5 feet above any water, and because they didn't want that to get down into the aquifer, you know, and that water was the same. It was coming up as well, and so it never made sense to me. And one year, still in 1998, I remember going down. The mayor of the township of Adula Tosserantio, Tom Walsh, said, Garfield, would you at least, as warden, would you at least come down and see the site? Come on down, we'll have breakfast on a Sunday morning, bring your wife, and we'll go out and look at the site, and because no one's been there. No elected people had been to the site. I didn't know where it was. I was the warden. I didn't even know where Site 41 was. And honest to God, I didn't know exactly where it was. I had a good idea near Wyville, in around Steve Ogden's place, somewhere in that area. And but I didn't know exactly the site. So I went down, and I couldn't believe my eyes on the South Simcoe site. First of all, it was on a gradient, on about a 9 or 10 degree gradient, straight up a hill for about 1.5 miles. And right in the middle of the hill, about about a quarter of a kilometer up the hill was a dug well. And in that dug well, it was an artesian dug well. And there was enough water in that well that it fed by gravity. They didn't even need a pump on Bonnie DeHaan's farm. Bonnie DeHaan was they're big dairy farmers. They're like the Nehus family. And the water went by gravity down into the barn and fed all the cattle, like, you know, and dairy cattle drink a lot of water. I'm probably guessing 100 gallons a day or something like that, or, so, you know, huge amounts. But they had about 60 milking cattle, I believe, at the time. And that was coming out of the side of this hill where the dump was going to go. So I went back the next day, or I think the following Tuesday morning we had a county council meeting, a county council committee meeting, and I went back and, Jesus, you want to talk about being a guy in shit? This is me. I brought this up, okay, and I'm sorry about the film thing, but I'm going to tell you, like, I went to that meeting and I said, guys, we have better start looking at these things ourselves as opposed to always saying everything's perfect. I was down there, and I don't think that's a good site at all, and I think we better review this thing big time before we go ahead. Keeping in mind, at this time, the Site 41 guys had kind of give up. They were not making a lot of noise, and they said, well, that's when I found out, well, the Site 41 just got approved, and it's okay. It was the same kind of a thing. I said, oh, okay, because the letter had just come in to Steve Clint saying that they've got their C of A. And I said, well, I'm not happy with it. I'm not going to support it if it comes to the floor. I'll tell you right now, as the warden, I won't do it because this is not a good spot for water in South Simcoe. And with that, I got a phone call, had to leave the room for something else. I come back in, I knew they were all talking about me, because you could just tell what someone's talking about when you walk through the door. And everybody was pouting, and it was really, really bad. But believe it or not, I was elected like in 1999, and we went to, Jim Wilson and I went to, because we actually had Dan Newman kill that one. And no one, we made that announcement at the Nottawasaga Inn. Nobody from the county came out that time for that announcement, but we just convinced the ministry and Dan Newman, the Minister of the Environment, that you just can't go ahead with that site. And then what happened, I hope I'm not taking too much time here, but I got a lot of notes, there's so much to talk about. But what happened was Walkerton hit. 2000, May of 2000, it was a disaster. People lost their lives. That woke up the people on the Community Monitoring Committee, and then people started getting all kinds of letters, and I'm talking about the Site 41 group. They come back alive. And I'll never forget, Ray Nehus came to my office, okay? And that's Anne's brother-in-law, and said, Garfield, what are we doing about Site 41? And that's the first one that had really come and said, he made an appointment to see me. And I said, well, geez, Ray, all the approvals are through. I mean, they're just designing this thing now. And he said, well, they haven't built it. They haven't built it, so why can't we still do something? And he said, because it's not a good spot. And following that, I got tons of letters from Gord Leonard and mainly Gord Leonard and Gordon Darrell Leonard, and then Steve really woke up, and the Nehus family, and we turned around and went to Jim Downer, the mayor of Midland. Gord Leonard asked Jim Downer and myself if we would go out on a Saturday morning in February of, I think it was winter of 2003, and look at what had happened to a pipe on Site 41. There was a test well on the site. And I'll pass this around. This is what we've seen. It was a winter day. There's a test well. The cap had blown off it. Water gushing out the top. It had flooded about 5 acres of the Site 41 lands. Later on, we were actually accused, by the way, or insinuated that we had actually loosened the cap. But we hadn't at all. We climbed over that fence, went over and looked at the thing, and I'll pass that around, Peter, if you could let people look at it. But it shows you how much water is coming out of the top of the pipe, how much water is actually on that site. That along with Walkerton convinced me we just cannot move it forward with this sort of thing. And we started, from my end at least, we tried our very, very best to move forward in a positive manner at the government. And of course, everybody at the government, at the Ministry of the Environment, it's a done deal. Only the county can reverse it. Forget it. So what we did some things though. We had thousands of petitions. I think it was 15,000 in the first batch.
11,000 in the first box.
11,000 in the first bunch. Then we asked Gord Miller. Gord Miller, the Environmental Commissioner of the Province of Ontario, I specifically did, I asked him under the Environmental Bill of Rights for a review of the application, that we had to go back and look at it. This is following Walkerton now. This is a hot topic. People had died and the Walkerton report was out and recommendations were on the, were coming forward. And Gord Miller put a report through, and I'd asked through the Environmental Bill of Rights and had a number of meetings with Gord as well. The Ministry of the Environment refused. Said, nope, it's fine. You're barking up the wrong tree. Everything's fine here. We're moving forward with it. And thank you for your application. And then Gord Miller came forward in his year-end report with 4 pages on Site 41, saying this is a disaster. This is back in 2004, 2005. And just nobody would listen. So we introduced a private members bill at that point. And the private members bill, we never did debate the first private members bill, but we at least had it on the record. Why did we put a private members bill forward? Because the government had just did Bill 49, the Adams Mine Lake Act, which said any body of water that had larger than like 2 acres, I can't remember the exact size of it, was they called the bottom of a mine a lake. And so therefore, that you don't have a lake out there, you've got a field. And so we're not going to approve the Site 41 bill, but certainly they went ahead and did the Bill 49 passed. The only reason that bill got passed, by the way, was one of their ministers, the Minister of Natural Resources, was planning on resigning from cabinet if they went ahead with the Adams Mine Lake, and that was David Ramsay. That's a known fact down there. And they went ahead and passed the bill and said it's the Adams Mine Lake Act. So we moved forward on that. But you know what? We were slowly in the design stages, moving forward through all that time, and when finally in 2008, after the last election, we introduced the bill again because it was getting closer to construction stage, and we needed a time when the people were excited about it, and would move forward and would debate the bill. However, I do understand the mayor of Tiny was here today and mentioned something about me being vocally supportive of Site 41. Nothing could be further from the truth. I didn't know a lot about it, so I never did ever come out and ever publicly say that I supported Site 41. I want to put that on the record for everybody here. And in fact, I believe the mayor of Tiny, when I made it public that I was going to reintroduce the bill, the private members bill, at the Roma conference in 2008, she actually questioned why I would do that. I said, well, because we want to stop it, don't we? And she questioned why I would bring that bill forward at that time. So I wanted to make sure that's on the video, and you folks all realize that as well. So but let's face it, we brought that forward. We had the Steve Ogden and Danny Beaton march, which was heartbreaking actually to see what they did, to walk to Toronto in that cold weather and bring attention, but more and more they had that. We had the rally from the residents of our area. Went down on the day we were doing the committee hearings on the Clean Water Act. Guys, if you're going to pass the Clean Water Act, maybe we better protect the water under Site 41. No one would listen. But you know what? When those bulldozers started to move on the site, and the Council of Canadians and the First Nation women from Beausoleil Island and Ann Nehus and the Ebenezer Church and all these folks got together, that brought attention to everything. And we moved. I think it's such a wonderful community effort to do something like that, and I applaud everybody that was part of it. And Shelley, I just want, as I told you earlier, I did bring pizza out. I brought some things too, pizza. And, okay. Okay. Because the fire, the fire starters, not the fire starters, the fire keepers, they really like the pizza. Okay. Anyhow, and on that, you know what? We ended up after the 2 county resolutions, and Peter, your work at the county, and then the county saying they were going to not put a moratorium on it forever. We did eventually bring, on November the 18th of last year, we brought forward the private members bill that said let's do away with the C of A, and in that time we'd had the people that had been charged by the police and had been protecting their rights is what I could say. I want to say one thing about the day we debated the second reading of Bill 32 in the legislature. I'm very fortunate to have in my caucus there's another girl from Simcoe North, Sylvia Jones, my God, she's just right behind me. Yeah, Sylvia Jones, yeah, she's one of the Joneses, like from Ebenezer, and just a great, great girl. And she spoke to the bill. And she did a better job of it than me, and I was trying to put out the points, but she talked about the human factor on the Site 41. And she talked about Keith and Ina Woods, the 76 and 82-year-old people that had been charged. And Ina, they actually called Ina when she was baking tarts in her kitchen and said, you're under arrest, sort of thing. And Sylvia stood up in the legislature and said, I've lived my life based on principle. The principles of honesty and hard work and standing up for what you believe in. And Sylvia in the legislature started to cry. And she said, what, it's a sad day when the people that taught me the values that I believe in were actually charged, actually put in, brought into a jail because they believe in the very principles that I live by today and I live by. And I will continue to live by my whole life. And Sylvia's, her aunt and uncle are in the crowd and a whole bunch of people, and she's crying away there as she's giving this speech. That brought a lot to me as a person, as a human being, and as a politician, that, there's some of us are really real and we really mean what we say. And Sylvia is one of those, and she was so fortunate because she just grew up a couple of miles away from the Site 41. She's now the MPP for Orangeville. And so I wanted to point those sorts of things out that's the kind of thing we've tried to do at the provincial level, and really, what I could say if I sum up and the lessons that we can bring forward from this is the education of politicians, getting the right people in place, people who are interested in their job that don't want to leave everything up all the time to the bureaucracy or to the people above them. You know what? Sometimes you can ask questions. Sometimes you can ask to see the blueprints. You know what, if it's a new library or an arena or a new bridge, everybody's out there with a photo op of the new bridge. It's a landfill, nobody even knows where the thing is. Okay? That's one thing you got to do. So these sorts of things in the future, anything to do with waste management, we've got to take a high priority. And then, of course, the education of the public. You know what? We spend thousands of dollars. If you ever watch from the provincial perspective, if you look at the TV and you look at the amount of advertising government does for, to sell lotto tickets, to sell, stop people from drinking and driving, all the different government ads there are. But there's nothing about, maybe we should do a better job of the landfills, and here's how to educate the public. My wife and I rent a little cottage, and we rent it to a lot of people that come from the city. And sometimes the people will leave 5 bags of garbage in a week. 5 bags. And you gotta basically open up all the garbage, take the plastics out, separate it yourself, because the people don't have a clue. They just put everything in a bag and dump it somewhere. And I still think we're not doing a very good job on that. And you know what? I'm not sure if there will be very many more landfills built in Ontario. I think we'll probably mine the ones we have in the future. I think we're going to have to look at. We're going to have the courage to move forward with new ideas. I personally think that we're. I know the zero waste objective is very, very important, and I'm leery that we can. I think it's. In a perfect world, we'll someday maybe get there, but I'm worried that we're still going to need some ways of handling some of our waste. And I think waste to energy systems are something that can be handled very positive in the future. The plasma systems, good contracts with between different jurisdictions. It doesn't have to just be one municipality like the county of Simcoe. You could have 6 or 8 regional governments going together to do one. And provincial legislation. I think if I can just say something that's a little bit off waste management, but it still affects water and the soil, is we're getting into a bit of a jam on septage and sludge. All these sewage treatment plants can't handle anymore, and nobody wants it dumped on the land. We get it every time there's an application or there's an approval from the ministry. So I think that's going to be another big challenge that the provincial government will have to face, and we'll have to face it with courage and find a way to build more lagoons, et cetera, like that type of thing, so we can best to handle septic and sludge from all the septic tanks, the millions of septic tanks that exist out there. And I think it's safe to say that that also we've got a challenge with all landfills in the province. I'd like to know how many aren't leaking. You know, that's what I'd like to know, how many are not leaking, because some of the people brag about these wonderful landfills they beat, and then you find out a little while later they've actually got major leaks in different places, and so, you know, they obviously failed at some points. Ontario Clean Water Act didn't touch on things like, the regulations haven't touched on things like landfills, and there should be more regulations around that and how they meet the requirements. The Water Opportunities Act, we're debating it right in the legislature right now. But you know what? Again, we need to talk about. I mean, you know, it's hard to build a Waters Opportunities Act and make Ontario the center of excellence for water in North America, and then find out we still have landfills that are leaking and all kinds of opposition to these kinds of projects. So I think the Waters Opportunities Act is just touching the base of you know, you almost need a Waters/Waste Management Opportunities Act, and I don't think we haven't gone that way because it's been very political. The Waters Opportunities Act is meant to, you know, to make cleaner water, build better filters and all that kind of thing, create jobs that way. But I think there will be, as we handle septage and sludge and landfill, there'll be many jobs created in that way as well. I've gone over this very quickly. You know, I wrote half the night to write all my points down there, and then I realized I didn't want to bore you all like that. But you know, I just want to say that it's been a wonderful experience dealing with the people from you know, the Steve Ogdens and the Nahus family and the Leonards, all the folks I've met on Christian Island, the Ebenezer Church group. I knew most of them before, anyways. But there's a whole bunch of really good people come together to kill this. And opened a lot of eyes at the County of Simcoe, a lot of eyes, because you know, in a lot of ways I was so disappointed in some of my colleagues from the County of Simcoe, because they just had to shut the book on it until they were under political pressure. And I also want to point out that as recently as 2004-05, all of the county councillors at that point had a copy of Gordon Miller's report on Site 41. I mean, I sent one out personally to everybody. They had it. Here's the page it's on. Please, guys, think about this again. So we've tried to do the very best we could. I was kind of a one-man show at Queen's Park there because I was kind of the Site 41 guy, but it was so great that the day of the bill when we had busloads of people and people. Oh, by the way, yeah, I'm rambling on. I couldn't believe, even my colleagues in all the other parties, they said they have never, ever been inundated with so many emails. One guy got 200 and some emails in 3.5 hours from people on Site 41, and he asked me to pass that on, how he had never seen anything like it. And he was a Liberal member from right here in London, Camille, you know. So he said that was incredible, you know. Anyhow, great job, and I'm happy to answer any kind of questions I can. And again, thank you very much for allowing me to be part of this today, Bill. Thank you. Yeah.